I'm Reagan Walker, 34 years old and a senior intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy. For 20 years, I've been in battles that most people never know about, the kind kept secret in government files. But nothing hurt me more than that day in the tribunal room. My dad stood in uniform, pointed at me across the room and said, "She's a disgrace to the Navy." The room went completely silent. It felt heavier than anything I'd ever faced. The judge stopped writing. A young officer dropped his pen and it clattered on the floor. Even the air vents seemed to go quiet. My chest felt tight, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew this was the moment people would remember. Not my medals, not my missions, not the soldiers I saved under gunfire. Just those words from my own father. He kept going, his eyes fixed on me, cold and firm. "Take off your uniform," he said. For a moment, I almost did. And before I take you through what happened next, let me ask, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below so I know how far this story reaches. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notifications for future stories. Now, let me tell you how it all started. I used to think nothing could shake me after surviving echo retrieval. I'd faced down guns, dragged wounded men through jungle mud, and kept going with a collapsed lung. Pain? Fear? I'd learned to lock those away. But standing there in my crisp uniform under the harsh tribunal lights, I realized I was wrong. Nothing had prepared me for this. My dad's voice sliced through the room. "She's a disgrace to the Navy." Those words didn't just echo. They hit like a bomb going off under me. I stood frozen, my world splitting apart. Every eye in the room turned to me. Generals, admirals, aides, clerks. They stared like I'd been caught burning the flag. The court reporter's hands froze above her keyboard. I kept my gaze fixed on the big American flag behind the tribunal bench, its stars and stripes glowing under the lights. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it over the whispers starting to spread. My father, General Douglas Walker, stood tall at the microphone, his medals shining like always. His eyes weren't angry. That would have been easier to take. They were cold, like he was reading a report, not tearing his own daughter apart in front of everyone. She kindized classified operations. She broke protocol. She embarrassed this uniform. I raised her to honor it, not disgrace it. My throat tightened. I wanted to yell, to fight back, but I couldn't move. His words kept coming, heavy like gunfire. He pointed at me like I was a stranger. "Remove your uniform." That hurt worse than any wound I'd ever taken. Someone in the front row gasped. A young lieutenant's jaw dropped, her clipboard forgotten. Even Admiral Cross shifted in his seat, looking uneasy. I swallowed, tasting something sharp, maybe blood, maybe rage. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It felt like my dad was trying to end me, right there in front of everyone. Memories hit me hard. Him teaching me to polish my boots until they shined, barking orders in the backyard when I was a kid, saluting me the day I graduated from the academy. That man was gone. The one at the podium was someone else, someone who cared more about his legacy than his own daughter. My fists clenched, digging into my pants. The pain in my ribs, the one I carried every day, flared up like it was daring me to keep standing. The judge cleared his throat. "General Walker, we're here to review operational conduct. Not—" "My daughter," my dad cut in. "Put lives at risk. She disobeyed orders. She's unfit to wear that uniform." The silence that followed was heavy, like it sucked all the air out of the room. My ears were ringing. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when it hit me. He wasn't here for justice. He was here to silence me, to bury my side of the story before I could tell it. I took a breath, then another. Slowly, I stood up. My chair scraped the floor, loud in the quiet room, like a shot ringing out. I didn't rush. I didn't say a word. My hand went to the top button of my jacket, and I felt every eye on me. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd crumble. They didn't know who I was. I stood there, my hand on the top button of my dress blues. The room so quiet it felt like everyone was holding their breath. For a second, I saw something flash across my dad's face. Not fear or regret, but shock, like he couldn't believe I might actually do it. One by one, I undid the buttons. Each click was soft but clear in the silence. Click, click, click. With every button, I felt like I was letting go of something. Not just the uniform, but the need to prove myself to him. I took off my jacket, folded it carefully over my arm like I'd done countless times before inspections. My hands didn't shake. I stood there in my white undershirt, sweat sticking it to my skin from the heat and pressure of the moment. Then, slowly, I lifted it just enough to show them. The room gasped. My scars were ugly, twisted lines carved into my side and ribs, like a map of pain. 2 small bumps showed where shrapnel was still lodged in me, too risky to remove. Those scars weren't just marks. They were proof of what I'd been through. One judge dropped his pen. An officer covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "My God." But I didn't look at them. I looked at Admiral Cross. He stood up slowly, not because he had to, but out of respect. His eyes met mine. Not like I was just a soldier, but like he saw what I really was. A survivor. My dad took half a step back. For the first time, I saw his face change. The hard edges softened. His shoulders slumped. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He sank into his chair, staring at the floor like he wished it would swallow him. I stood there, exposed, but not weak. Let them look. Let them sit in that heavy silence where the truth doesn't need to shout. It just is. I pulled my shirt back down and buttoned my jacket again, taking my time, every move deliberate. My breathing was steady now. My ribs hurt, not from the old wounds, but from something older. The pain of being doubted, dismissed, judged by someone else's rules. I straightened my collar and faced the tribunal. Some looked away. Others held my gaze, and I knew they saw more than scars. They saw what I'd carried when no one else came for us. When I spoke, my voice was calm but firm. "You call me useless," I said, looking at the man who taught me how to salute. But I survived what no one was supposed to. I dragged men out of that jungle, bleeding through my own uniform. I didn't do it for medals. I did it because leaving them wasn't an option. The room stayed still. Even the lights seemed heavier with the truth I'd laid out. My dad didn't say a word. And that's when I understood. He wasn't here to shame me for failing. He was here to silence me before I could tell the truth. That made me dangerous. Nobody said a word. The hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed above me, and I heard a chair squeak as someone shifted, but the room stayed quiet, like I'd carved the silence myself. I took a deep breath, the kind you take before jumping into something you can't come back from. "You all read the report," I started, my voice clear and steady. "It calls Echo Retrieval a compromised extraction mission. Says I showed extraordinary courage and got hurt in an ambush. Sounds brave, right? Clean. Like a story already finished." I looked right at the head judge. But that's not what happened. I shifted my weight, feeling the ache in my ribs, a reminder I wasn't just talking about the past. I was still living it. "You want the truth the report left out?" I asked, looking at each face in the room. "It doesn't tell you our radios died 5 minutes after we landed. It doesn't say the coordinates we got were hours old. It doesn't say we walked straight into a trap someone had to know was there." A junior officer at the table's end scribbled something. "Good. Let them write it down. Let them listen." The report doesn't mention Ruiz's radio sparking out the second the shooting started. It doesn't say Kim got hit in the shoulder before we even saw the enemy. It doesn't say the jungle lit up like they knew exactly where we'd be. I clenched my jaw, memories flooding back. The screams, the smell of mud and burning gear, the weight of Mason's body as I pulled him through the chaos, my own blood soaking into the ground. And it sure doesn't say I crawled half-blind with broken ribs and torn muscles to drag my team out, one by one. Admiral Cross leaned forward, his face hard to read but focused. I held his gaze. That's all missing because someone made sure it was. My words settled in the room like dust after an explosion. I could see it on their faces, the doubt creeping in. They were starting to realize the report wasn't the whole story. It was just a version, made to protect someone or something. I turned to my dad, still sitting, still silent. His hands were gripped tight in his lap, knuckles white. He wouldn't look at me. "You want to call me reckless?" I said, my voice calm but firm. Fine, but I didn't make it up as I went because I was scared. I did it because the plan fell apart. The intel was bad. We were on our own. And someone approved that mission knowing it was wrong. I paused, then added, quieter but sharper. I'd bet my life that whoever signed off knew exactly what they were doing. Murmurs rippled through the room, low and uneasy, like a storm brewing in their minds. I stood taller. "I came back with scars and questions," I said. "Only one of those made it into the report." I walked back to my seat. The chair creaked as I sat down, but nobody spoke. They didn't dare. For the first time in this tribunal, the story wasn't coming from rank or reputation. It was coming from someone who'd bled for it. As I sat back down, I felt the room's eyes on me, but it wasn't the same. They weren't looking at me like I was the one on trial anymore, or some broken soldier. It was like I'd just lit a spark in a room full of gas, and everyone was waiting to see what would catch fire. The judge cleared his throat. "Captain Walker, we will now—" he started, but Admiral Cross raised his hand. "Permission to address the witness," Cross said, his voice steady but strong enough to hush the whole room. The judge paused, then nodded. Cross stood, his uniform perfect as always, but his eyes were different, harder, sharper. He looked at me, and for the first time, I didn't see pity. I saw determination. "Captain Walker," he said, "we need your full story." Not the cleaned-up report, not the one with missing pages. The truth. Every detail, every gap, starting with the night you weren't supposed to make it back. His words hit like a jolt. Heads turned, pens stopped. Even the court reporter looked up. My dad shifted in his seat, just a little, but I noticed. His back stiffened, his jaw locked, like he was readying himself for a hit. He knew what was coming, and I wasn't going to hold back. I stood slowly, every move careful. My ribs hurt, but that pain kept me grounded. It reminded me why I was still here, why I didn't break when he tried to shame me, why I didn't vanish when the news called me unstable. I faced the tribunal. "Let me make this clear," I said. "This isn't just about a mission gone wrong. It's about a cover-up, one that goes beyond me, beyond my team, beyond this room." Whispers spread through the room, sharp and uneasy. "This was never meant to get out," I went on. "The mission, the losses, the dead radios, the 30 minutes missing from the deployment log, someone erased it, not by mistake, on purpose." My dad shifted again, still silent, still avoiding my eyes. That's when I decided I was done being careful. I looked straight at him, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You came here to ruin me, sir," I said. "You called me a disgrace, not because I messed up, but because I wouldn't stay quiet." His eyes met mine at last. No anger, just fear. "You raised me to survive everything but you," I said, and I did. Now I'm here, alive, and you're the one who can't face me. The room felt electric, the air thick. Someone on the panel shifted in their seat, uneasy. But I kept going. "I'll tell this tribunal everything. The names, the logs, the timestamps, the files that were supposed to be gone. I'll show you what's missing and who made it vanish." I scanned the room, not just the tribunal, but the faces along the walls. Some curious, some nervous, some afraid. And if that makes me unstable, I said, my voice firm. Maybe the system doesn't need stable. Admiral Cross gave a single nod. Captain Walker, he said, you're granted a formal debrief in a classified session. Report to the Secure Intelligence Panel at 0600 tomorrow. Bring everything. The gavel struck the table once. The room let out a breath. As I turned to leave, I passed my dad. He didn't say a word, but his hand gripped his chair so hard his knuckles were white. He was readying himself for a fight he never thought I'd wage. And I was just getting started. The room felt cold, not from the air, but from the mood. I'd been in briefing rooms plenty of times. Mission plans, intel updates, the usual. I knew how they worked, how they sounded. But this one? It didn't feel like a place for truth. It felt like a place built to keep secrets. 6 officers sat around an oval table, their ranks lined up like pieces on a game board. Admiral Cross was at the head. Next to him was a 2-star general from Fort Irwin, a guy who once called me the Navy's best at handling chaos. Today, he wouldn't even glance my way. Major Haley Ford sat in the corner, her face blank, her uniform too perfect, like she was trying too hard. I stood in the middle, alone. No lawyer, no aide, just me. Captain Reagan Walker, Cross said, his voice calm but official. You're here to give a full report on Operation Echo Retrieval. Everything stays in this room. This is classified level Omega. Nothing said here can be used in open court until it's verified. I nodded. Understood, sir. A screen behind me lit up. My face appeared, captured by a recon drone during the ambush. I was crouched, blood on my face, fire in the background. The video started. Silent. Just images. I hated watching it. Every gunshot on the screen tightened my chest. Every glimpse of Ruiz and Mason reminded me of what I'd lost and what I was still fighting for. I clicked my pointer, freezing the video. This frame is timestamped 1944, I said. But the mission log says the fighting started at 2017. That's a 33-minute gap. Either the logs were changed, or this video is from an earlier fight that wasn't reported. Nobody said anything. I clicked again, bringing up the radio logs. No signals went out between 1942 and 2005. That shouldn't happen. Our radios pinged satellites every 90 seconds, even if jammed. Someone deleted that data before it reached the secure server. Still. Silence. I looked at their faces. Some blank, some thinking hard, some nervous. Then I looked at Haley. Our eyes locked. She blinked once, quick, but I knew that look. I'd seen it before when she covered for Barnes after we lost him on a recon job. It wasn't tiredness. It was guilt. Major Ford, I said, stepping out of line. You checked the secondary encryption for Echo's mission brief, right? She looked at me, then away. That was handled by CyberOps Central, she said. I just checked the hardware. Half true, I could tell. I nodded slowly. Got it. Cross cleared his throat. Captain Walker, we're not here for guesses. With respect, sir, I said, keeping my voice steady. This isn't a guess. It's a pattern. Missing timestamps, changed data, logs routed through private contractor networks. Someone wanted Echo to vanish, and they didn't just mess up. They got caught. A pause hung in the air. Then a Navy intel commander spoke, his fingers pressed together under his chin. Captain, why would anyone in our own command want that? I met his eyes. That's what I'm here to figure out, I said. But we won't find answers by acting like this was just a bad mission. We have to follow the trail nobody wants to touch. Cross leaned back, nodding slightly. His stare felt heavier now, not angry or friendly, just sizing me up, like he was deciding if I'd be trouble or a tool. Fine, he said. You have 1 week. You'll get access to Level 4 archives and a civilian analyst to help. No outside contact, and your movements will be watched. I nodded. And if I find something? He didn't hesitate. Then you bring the fight. The hallway outside the archive felt like it belonged somewhere else. Dark, with plain doors and a quiet so deep I could hear the faint hum of the old lights above. I didn't ask Haley to come. She just showed up. I was digging through satellite logs from the mission's backup drone when she slipped into the room, quiet as a shadow. Same uniform, same braid over her shoulder from our days in Bahrain. But she moved stiffly, like she was carrying something heavier than her boots. Guilt. "Been a while," she said, arms crossed. "Too long," I answered, not looking up from my work. She leaned against the wall, watching me sort through encrypted files and missing data, like I was chasing something that wasn't there. "Still the same Reagan," she said under her breath. "Always trying to fix what's broken." Her words hit harder than I expected. I turned to face her. "I'm not fixing anything, Haley. I'm uncovering what someone tried to hide." She looked down, and the room went quiet again. Then I noticed it. Her fingers tapping lightly on her belt. A nervous habit from way back when she'd lie to cover for someone. I knew it too well. "You didn't come here to catch up," I said. "What do you know?" Her jaw tightened. "Nothing I can prove." "Tell me anyway." She stepped closer, voice low. 3 weeks before Echo, there was a meeting. I was supposed to be in it, but they swapped me out for someone from StratOps at the last second. When I asked why, they said it was above my pay grade. Then the mission files vanished. No backups. Even the deletion records were gone. I stared at her. "And you didn't report it?" "I did, to Colonel Martin." She paused. "He told me to drop it. Said pushing it would hurt my career." There it was. A threat. Dressed up as advice. Haley always wanted to climb the ranks, and she never hit it. But I thought she'd never cross that line into betrayal. Guess that line wasn't so clear anymore. "You should have told me sooner," I said quietly. "I thought I was keeping you safe." She snapped. "I figured if I didn't drag you into it, they'd leave you alone." I stepped closer, our faces inches apart. "They didn't leave me alone, Haley. They sent me in. Then they tried to erase me." She froze like my words hit her hard. Her mouth opened, but no apology came out. "You know who ordered the files changed, don't you?" I asked. She looked away. "I can't prove it," she whispered. "You just did." My heart was racing, but I turned back to the screen. Haley was a crack in their wall, a small break and a bigger lie. Push her too hard and she'd clam up, or worse, tip off whoever was behind this. So I softened my tone. "Look, if you won't help me outright, just stay out of my way. That's all I need." She nodded slowly. "I'll act like this talk never happened." But at the door, she stopped. "There's a file," she said, not turning around. "Echo Delta 17. I couldn't get into it. It's locked with an old access key, the kind only top brass use. You'll need a token." "What kind?" "Physical, not digital." Then she left. Two things were clear right then. Haley was scared, and someone high up was banking on me never finding that file. At 2:13 a.m., my secure terminal pinged, lighting up with a single message. The sender was unknown, and it used an old encryption protocol, something no one in the military would touch unless they were trying to cover their tracks the hard way. The subject line read, "You're not wrong, but you're not safe either." I paused before opening it, not out of fear, but because I knew it would turn everything upside down. The email had no text, just an attachment. Log 17 Bravo redacted and 3 words. "Trace the gaps." I saved it to a burner drive and unplugged my terminal from the network, my heart pounding, hands cold. The file was a piece of Echo's communication logs, timestamps, signal pings, voice confirmations. But something wasn't right. I compared it to the official mission records I'd seen earlier. There were gaps, small ones at first. A missing ping, a delayed response. Then a 17-minute blank. 17 minutes might not seem like much, but in a firefight, it's everything. In those 17 minutes, we lost 2 men. I took a bullet to the ribs. Someone made a call that got people killed. I dug into the log's metadata. It had been tampered with. Not wiped, but stitched together. The edits were messy, with overlapping data and broken headers. This wasn't a hacker's work. It was someone inside, someone careless or desperate. I studied the altered code, trying to piece together what was removed. Then it hit me. The call signs were wrong. Bravo 2 was Ruiz, but the last voice tagged as Bravo 2 wasn't his. It was mine. Except I never said those words. I checked the audio again. It was my voice, but pulled from another transmission, spliced to make it sound like I gave an order that delayed our extraction. Someone was setting me up to take the fall. The room felt too loud suddenly. The hum of the air vents, the buzz of the lights, my own heartbeat. I stepped back from the screen. They didn't just cover up the mission. They pinned the failure on me. My hands shook as I plugged in another drive to save the tampered data. I needed hard proof. Something that would stand up in the tribunal, or even in public if it came to that. I wasn't sure which was riskier anymore. A soft knock at the door startled me. It was Kevin, the civilian analyst Admiral Cross assigned. A quiet guy, barely 30, with a background in cybersecurity for defense contractors. "You okay?" he asked, seeing my face. "Did you send me that file?" I asked straight out. He blinked. "What file?" "Don't lie." He hesitated. I didn't send anything, but... He stepped inside, voice low. "I heard chatter. They're planning to cut your access in 48 hours, saying it's a protocol breach. You're making people nervous." "Good," I said. That meant I was getting close. I looked him in the eyes. "Then help me make them more nervous." He nodded once. "I'll run a quiet scan on the comm server, but if they catch me, I'm done." "We're both done," I said. "But if we don't do this, the truth is gone too." Kevin moved like his life depended on it, and maybe it did. We had less than 48 hours before they locked me out for good, and once that happened, the truth would disappear like it never existed. In a quiet corner of the intelligence server room, buried under layers of secure encryption, we chased the source of that anonymous email. The signal bounced through at least 7 ghost servers, mostly in Eastern Europe. Whoever sent it knew how to cover their tracks, but I'd learned a thing or two from my Black Ops days. Burned metadata can leave faint traces. Echo signatures, old-fashioned and messy. And that's what I found. A piece of a name in the packet ID. DKR7. I stopped cold. Only one person I knew signed logs like that. Daniel Kruger. He wasn't just some analyst. He was my dad's protege. They'd worked together for years in Cyber Command before Dad retired. I could still picture Daniel at our house during holidays, his awkward laugh calling me sir before I even had a uniform. If he sent that email, why was he helping me now? Kevin pulled up a decrypted piece of a message, cut off in the middle. "Never meant for her to get caught in the blast. I thought it'd be just a scapegoat order, not full deployment. You promised..." I didn't need to see the rest. It was clear. Daniel had helped set up the Echo mission. He'd agreed to let me take the blame, thinking it'd be a small fall. But the mission went wrong. People died. I almost did. And now, guilt was eating him alive. I sat there, quiet, staring at the screen where his code signature blinked like a faint pulse. DKR7, last seen, Annapolis Hub, Secure Terminal 4. "He's still in the system," I whispered. Kevin leaned closer. "Want to track him?" "More than that," I said. "I want to face him." "That hub's locked down to command-level access," Kevin said. "You won't even get near the building." I met his eyes. "I will with my father's badge." His jaw dropped. "You kept it?" I took it. He blinked, then let out a nervous laugh. "That's crazy." "I know. But I meant it. If Daniel was turning on my dad, the betrayal went deeper than I thought. Maybe it didn't start with the tribunal or even the mission. Maybe the man I called Dad had been fighting his own secret war long before Echo, and I was just another casualty. The Annapolis Secure Hub looked too clean from the outside, like a science lab or some fancy think tank. Steel doors, glass panels, and quiet guards in plain uniforms gave nothing away about the secrets humming inside. I stood at the gate, wearing my dad's badge and a fake base uniform Kevin helped me put together. My hair was tucked under a cap pulled low, my heart racing. I'd slipped into enemy camps and talked my way out of standoffs in languages most couldn't speak. But this? Pretending to be my dad? This was new. The badge scanned green. The gate hissed open. I walked in. Every step down the hallway felt like I was sneaking through my own past. The walls were covered with awards, citations, and old photos of task force victories. My dad's name was everywhere. Colonel Thomas Morgan. It turned my stomach. Even after the tribunal, he was still their hero. The elevator to sublevel 4 was quiet, just a low hum. I counted the seconds to stay calm. 39. The doors opened with a soft ding. I wasn't ready for what I saw. Daniel waiting for me. He didn't even blink. He just smiled, like he'd been expecting me all along. "Talia," he said softly. "Took you long enough." I froze in the doorway. "How did you—" "I saw your trace pings," he said, nodding at the glowing terminals behind him. "You're not as sneaky as you used to be." He looked worn out, older than I remembered. Gray speckled his beard and his shoulders sagged like he hadn't slept in days, maybe years. But his eyes, they still had that soft, sorry look from when I was a kid, when he'd carried me inside after I fell and Dad didn't even glance up from his cigar. "You sent the file," I said. He nodded. "I did." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a sealed folder marked Echo Command/Class 4 from a drawer and handed it to me. I opened it. Inside were transcripts, communication logs, and mission approvals, all stamped with my dad's name and signature. One line stood out under Mission Contingency 2A. Use expendable fallback. Redirect accountability if compromised. Fallback. Lieutenant T. Morgan. Me. It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew he marked me as expendable." Daniel wouldn't look at me. I told him not to. I begged him. "But your dad, he thought you'd make it through. He thought it wouldn't be a big deal." "A big deal?" My voice broke. "I nearly died, Daniel. 2 men did die." "I know." I stepped back, still holding the folder. "You helped hide it." He looked at me then, shame in his eyes. "I did. For a while. Until I saw you wouldn't stay quiet. Then I had to choose." "Why not come clean?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Because your dad saved my life once. I owed him. And I was weak." The silence hit hard. In that moment, I saw it clearly. This wasn't just a broken rule, or even about me. It was my dad's legacy coming apart. He'd built a name on duty and honor, but when it mattered, he'd thrown me to the wolves to save himself. Daniel wasn't the one who planned it. He was just the guy too scared to stop it. I stepped closer, gripping the folder. "Where's the original audio? The uncut comms from the 17-minute gap?" He hesitated, then typed on the console. A file popped up, encrypted, Level 7. He handed me a drive. "You didn't get this from me." "I never get anything from you," I said. Then I turned and walked away. I couldn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. I locked myself in a secure intel room buried deep under the barracks, a place even admirals needed special clearance to enter. Kevin had tweaked the logs to make it look like an empty storage closet. He didn't ask why, just handed me a thermos of black coffee and left. The second the door hissed shut, I plugged in the encrypted drive Daniel gave me. A password prompt popped up. I tried my birthday. No go. Then my dad's. Still nothing. My heart was pounding as I stared at the blinking cursor. On a hunch, I typed, "Blood buys silence." It worked. The screen flickered, then flooded with audio logs, reports, coordinates, and memos, all marked with red headers. Classified. Operation Echo Command. I opened the comms file from the day of the failed mission. The 17-minute gap they claimed didn't exist. When it played, my stomach twisted. It wasn't just static or interference. It was silence, edited on purpose. Orders were cut out, voices rearranged. My own voice was clipped to make it sound like I'd gone off script. But now, I heard the truth. Proceed with fallback. Package integrity non-essential. Confirm strike override from high clearance chain. It was my dad's voice. He wasn't even there, but he gave the order. I was the fallback, the non-essential. And the strike, the explosion that killed 2 of my men? It wasn't an accident. It was planned, a clean sweep. I stopped the file and opened another folder. March 14 Incident Report, Internal. It detailed another squad. Bravo 7, a covert unit killed 2 weeks before my mission. Cause of death, improvised explosive device. But a note under autopsy discrepancies said, no shrapnel pattern consistent with IED, suggest controlled detonation. Another note was colder. Close investigation. Issue public report per agreed narrative. I leaned back in the chair. This wasn't just about me. There were other missions, other soldiers, other lies. Operation Echo Command wasn't a failed op. It was a system to cover up problems, silence anyone who asked questions, and protect the people at the top. And my dad? He wasn't just part of it. He helped build it. I opened the last file, a message thread between 2 big names. Admiral Sloan, head of naval intelligence, and my dad. They were talking about personnel moves and how to look good for a Senate review of overseas operations. One line stopped me cold. Morgan's daughter will serve as a loyalty metric. If she fails publicly, it will reestablish command optics. I wasn't a soldier to them. I was a tool, a way to polish the Navy's image. My hands went cold. I stared at the screen, barely breathing, my ribs aching like the wounds were fresh. I remembered waking up in the hospital, tubes in my arms, the smell of smoke still on me. I'd asked the nurse, "Did we make it?" She'd said softly, "Only you." Now I knew why. They made sure I was the only survivor, because 1 person is easier to silence than 3. I gripped the table, trying to breathe through the rage, the betrayal, the weight of it all. This wasn't just about being framed. It was about a system running on lies and lives, and I was done playing their game. I stood before the internal tribunal again, but this time I wasn't the one on trial. I was the one pointing fingers. The room hadn't changed. Dark wood walls, the Navy's seal behind the high desk, and a semicircle of officers with their medals gleaming under the harsh lights. But the mood was different. Colder, like they'd already made up their minds before I opened my mouth. Admiral Sloan sat in the center, tapping her pen on a file, lips tight. Rear Admiral Vance was on her left, General Leland, my old commander, on her right. I took a deep breath. "I've got classified files showing someone tampered with Operation Echo Command records," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "There's audio proving orders were given to frame me and cover up the deaths of Lieutenant Crowitz and Specialist Connor. Their deaths weren't accidents. They were planned." Whispers spread through the room like static. I set the encrypted drive on the evidence tray. This has everything. Full transcripts, unedited audio, including a conversation between Admiral Sloan and my father, Colonel Thomas Morgan. Sloan's eyes flickered, just for a moment. Then she leaned forward. "Lieutenant Morgan, do you understand what you're accusing us of?" "I do," I said. "And I'm not accusing. I'm telling the truth." Vance smirked. "Your truth where you're the victim." I held his gaze. "I didn't ask to be the only one left." They glanced at each other. Sloan nodded to a junior officer. "Check the files." The officer plugged in the drive, and the room dimmed as the screen lit up. The first file played, my dad's voice clear as day. Fallback. Package expendable. Override strike confirmed. The words hit the room hard. Some officers flinched, others blinked. Leland just sat there, stone-faced. Sloan raised her hand. Stop the recording. The screen froze. Lieutenant Morgan, she said slowly, where did you get this? Commander Daniel Miles gave it to me, I said, after I dug into it myself. Did Commander Miles follow the chain of command to get this? No. And did you break security rules to access classified data during your investigation? I paused. Yes. Then you've admitted to espionage, she said, her voice flat. Gasps echoed around the room. I found proof of a cover-up that killed people, I shot back. Sloan leaned back. You broke into restricted systems, stole classified files, and shared them without permission. That's not heroism, Lieutenant. That's a crime. My fists tightened. I had no choice. You had every choice, she said. You chose to ignore the chain of command. Because the chain of command hid the truth, I snapped. Enough, Sloan said, her voice sharp now. But I wasn't finished. I turned to the tribunal. You want to write me off because I didn't follow your rules? Those rules protect you, not the soldiers dying out there. I did what you wouldn't. I told the truth. The room went quiet. Then Leland spoke, his voice low. Your emotions and personal grudges have clouded your judgment, Lieutenant. You've shown recklessness, paranoia, and disobedience. I move for a psychological evaluation under Clause 46. B, mental and emotional compromise. My breath caught. No, I said. You can't. I second the motion, Sloan said. Hands went up. Votes were cast. It was done in under 30 seconds. I didn't even get another word in. The verdict came fast. Temporary removal from duty, pending a psych review. My security access was cut, my equipment taken, my badge gone. They stripped me of my rank and my voice. As I walked out, each step felt heavier than the last. Eyes followed me, but no one offered a word of support. To them, I was already gone, a ghost leaving a building that had decided I didn't matter. All I had left was the truth, and the scars to back it up. They put me in a cold, white room. No windows, no daylight, just a metal bed and a blinking camera in the corner. They called it the Internal Psychological Observation Room, but it was a jail dressed up as a hospital. I sat there in a gray gown, my combat watch gone, my badge taken, my name erased. Just me and the quiet. Every day, a medical officer stopped by. They didn't see me as a person, more like a problem to fix or a case already closed. On the third day, Dr. Heller, a woman with a voice as flat as a machine, sat across from me. Reagan, tell me about who you think is working against you, she said. I stared at her. I don't think. I know. Do you often hear voices that aren't real? She asked. I gave a small laugh. You're asking if I'm paranoid? She didn't answer, just wrote something down. That's when I got it. They didn't need to prove me wrong. They just needed me to look unstable. For a woman in the military, scarred from battle and carrying wounds that made people flinch, calling me traumatized was the easiest way to shove me aside. I remembered what my dad told me when I was a kid, after I fell off the barn roof during training. If you want to stand up, don't wait for someone to help you. I wasn't waiting now. That night, I held a tiny piece of paper in my hand. It had codes from Daniel, internal data gateway navigation codes he'd given me before they locked me up. I'd sent them to Kevin, the only person I trusted, using a signal hidden in my old watch. Kevin had answered. He'd built a back door, a way for me to tap into the system from inside this place if I could get a device in a moment alone. I had no device, but I had my memory. I started piecing together everything in my head. Every conversation, every command code, every file I'd seen. I held on to it, waiting for the right chance. On the 7th day, a young soldier named Miles brought my meal. He was different. Not cold like the others, not scared. As he set down the tray, he whispered, "I heard what you did in Afghanistan. My cousin was in your unit. You saved him." I looked up. "Need anything?" he asked, voice so low I barely heard it. I held his gaze. In those few seconds, I knew this was my shot. "A pencil, paper," I whispered. He left without a word. 3 days later, a folded receipt was tucked in my napkin. I wrote on it, binary code mixed with unit symbols, a scrambled algorithm, and the decryption trick Kevin once showed me as a joke. I slipped it back to Miles, like I'd left it by mistake. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and walked out. Days passed, and I waited. Every noise in the hall was either hope or a threat. Then, one night, the camera blinked 3 times and went dark. I knew what it meant. Kevin had the data, and he had a plan. I leaned back on the bed and closed my eyes. They'd taken my honor, my rank, my freedom, but not the truth. When I walk out of this room, I'll tear their system down, starting with the man who raised me. 7 days after the camera in my hospital room blinked 3 times and went dark, they let me go. No big announcement, no apologies, just my folded Navy uniform on a chair and a sealed envelope labeled "Return to Command." I walked out of that rehab center like I didn't exist. But inside, I'd changed. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was ready to fight. Not with guns, but with evidence and strategy. I didn't go back to base. I went straight to Kevin. He was holed up in an old, beat-up communications post 12 miles from the main base. It looked like a rusted shack, but it still had access to military-grade signal routers nobody bothered to lock down. "Jesus, Talia," Kevin said when he saw me. "No time," I said. "We need to move." We spread out everything I'd memorized: encrypted messages, server logs from Daniel, photos, and hidden reports Kevin had saved. Together, we built a data package called FRACTURE. It was designed to break the whole cover-up wide open. Fracture had everything: video logs, timelines, proof of fake reports, and orders to hide battlefield deaths. At the heart of it was my dad, a decorated colonel who called me a disgrace in front of the tribunal and helped bury the truth. We chose our moment carefully: the National Military Honors Ceremony at Westmore Academy. Every big name would be there: generals, commanders, even the Secretary of Defense. The media would broadcast it live. And by some twist, I was set to be honored for my service, like I was already gone. They didn't expect me to show up. That's why it was perfect. I wasn't there for the honor. I was there to drop the truth like a bomb. Kevin looked at me as I fixed my uniform. "If you do this, there's no turning back," he said. "I don't want to," I replied. Our plan was tight. Kevin would hack the auditorium's projection feed. At 10:44 a.m., when they called my name, he'd swap their honor video for a 4-minute video laying out everything: illegal orders, faked reports, and the mission they tried to erase. I also had hard copies in classified folders for the Secretary of Defense and 2 Senate oversight chairs, just in case they cut the feed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in a rundown motel room with peeling walls and flickering lights, running through every scenario. Would they arrest me on stage? Deny it all? Would anyone believe me? 2 voices played in my head. My dad's, "You're a stain on the uniform." And Captain Rhodes, the one man who'd had my back. "Talia, you don't back down. Not now." I chose Rhodes. By 9:45 a.m., I was inside Westmore Academy's perimeter. At 10 o'clock, the ceremony started. Flags waving, cameras rolling, a brass band playing the anthem. At 10:37, I slipped through a side entrance. At 10:44, they'd call my name. I'd either walk out in cuffs, or I'd make everything burn. The auditorium at Westmore Academy was a study in control. Flags hung perfectly, cameras gliding smoothly, medals shining on rigid uniforms. It was designed to keep everything in line, but I was about to tear that apart. I slipped in through the East Wing. My dress blew sharp, steps steady. A few people glanced my way, but Kevin's forged badge, logistics liaison, media tech, kept them from asking questions. It was almost too fitting. Kevin's voice crackled in my earpiece. 5 minutes out. Server room located. I've got you. Copy, I whispered, going in. The server room was down a restricted hallway. Kevin had mapped it using old building plans. I passed 2 officers chatting about lunch schedules, my heart racing but my face calm. Confidence was my cover. Inside, I locked the door behind me. The room was lined with server panels, humming with secrets. I found the access port Kevin had flagged, pulled the portable drive from my jacket, and plugged it in. Upload started, Kevin said. Breaking encryption now. 90 seconds before they spot the data spike. I watched the status bar, my breath shallow. Years of lies, betrayal, and cover-ups were about to go public. A knock at the door. Logistics team? A voice called. We've got a glitch in the A-stream projection. I froze. Another knock, sharper this time. I cracked the door, faked a smile, and waved a pretend clipboard. Pushing a patch now. Routine sync, 5 minutes. The officer looked skeptical but walked away. I shut the door. Status? I whispered. Upload done, Kevin said, voice tight. Failsafe ready. When they call your name, Fracture takes over the A-stream. Outside, the ceremony was underway. The MC's voice echoed through the walls, listing names and honors. Lieutenant Commander Talia Morgan for her courage in combat, her unyielding commitment. I yanked the drive out, slipped it into my pocket, and headed to the main hall. My name glowed on the big screen, but instead of their tribute video, it flickered. Then it started. The screen went black for 2 seconds. A title appeared. Operation Fracture. Classified files leaked under Article 4, Whistleblower Act. The auditorium went silent, like the air had been sucked out. Cameras stopped. Officers leaned back as the video rolled. Raw combat footage, burned vehicles, body bags, doctored mission logs, and fake casualty reports. A voiceover laid out what really happened in Operation Halberd and who gave the orders that killed my team. Then my dad's voice played. She's not a soldier. She's a liability. Sweep it. No one needs to know. Gasps filled the room. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" Another yelled, "Turn it off." But Kevin had made Fracture unstoppable, jumping from one projector to the next like a virus. It spread across every screen and military network. I stood at the back, hidden behind 2 Marines, watching the most powerful people in the room face their own lies. Names of conspirators flashed on screen, and chaos erupted. Shouts for a lockdown, officers whispering in shock. I turned and walked out before they could spot me. I wasn't there to watch them panic. I was there to shatter their silence. I thought the worst moment of my life was hearing my dad call me a useless soldier in front of the tribunal. I was wrong. Nothing hit harder than facing him after Fracture went live. 20 minutes after the video ended, the auditorium was cleared, labeled a security breach. But the truth was out. My name was everywhere on the encrypted intranet. Classified channels buzzed with reactions, some shocked, some angry, but most finally paying attention. I found him by the empty reflection pool outside the academy, statues of war heroes staring down like judges. He didn't turn when I walked up. "Enjoy your moment, Talia?" he asked, his voice low and cold. "I didn't do it for that," I said. He faced me slowly, his eyes sharp but not angry anymore. They held something worse. Fear. "You don't get what you've done," he said. "You humiliated an entire branch of the military on a national stage." I stepped closer, my boots loud on the stone. "No, you did that," I said, locking eyes with him. "When you picked your career over your soldiers, over your own daughter." His jaw tightened. "You don't know the pressure at that level. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. That's the real war." I laughed, sharp and raw. "I bled in that war. I buried my team. I've got shrapnel in my ribs because of your orders. Don't talk to me about sacrifice." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You called me a disgrace in that tribunal because it was easier than admitting you were wrong, easier than owning what you did. You chose your legacy over my life. For a moment, he looked rattled, but then his guard went back up. You're not the only one war has broken, he said. I pulled the classified documents from my jacket, printouts Kevin and I had prepared, stamped with clearance logs and whistleblower protections. I dropped them at his feet. This isn't just about me. It's about every soldier you let die unnamed, every voice you silenced. He stared at the papers. You think they'll believe you now? They already do, I said. The footage is with the Inspector General and 2 Senate committees. It's over. Silence stretched between us. The father I once idolized, the commander I feared, was just a man now, clinging to a fading reputation. You've burned every bridge, he said. They won't take you back. I don't need them to, I said. I didn't survive for their approval. I survived to stop this from happening again. He turned away, not in dismissal, but in shame. As I walked past him, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt free. They told me I didn't have to speak, but I knew I had to. After Fracture hit the secure servers and leaked to major news outlets, the Department of Defense scrambled. Internal reviews, quick retirements, emergency hearings. Then came the call for a public address. Not to apologize or salute me as a soldier, but to hear me as a whistleblower. Backstage, I wore a plain uniform, no medals, no rank. I'd left them behind, not because they were taken, but because they didn't define me anymore. I wasn't here for the Navy. I was here for the truth. For us. Kevin stood close, his face a mix of worry and pride. The hum of live cameras and the shuffle of reporters filled the air. A producer approached. It's time, Lieutenant Commander Morgan. Just Talia, I said softly. I stepped onto the stage. The lights hit hard and the room went silent. An auditorium packed with officers, veterans, press, and survivors, all waiting to hear why I'd done it. The mic gave a faint squeal. I took a breath. My name is Talia Morgan. I was a Navy officer for over a decade. I've worn the flag, followed orders, buried friends. I've seen brave people forgotten and powerful ones decide who matters and who doesn't. 2 years ago, Operation Halberd sent my covert unit into hostile territory with bad intel. The mission was set up to fail. We were scapegoats for a diplomatic mess. My team died. I was injured, nearly paralyzed. When I came home, I thought the truth would count. It didn't. I scanned the crowd. Some angry, some touched, some blank, but all listening. They erased records, faked reports, punished survivors. The man who gave the order stood before a tribunal and called me a useless soldier. That man was my father. The room froze. This isn't just my story. It's about what happens when silence is rewarded and truth is buried under rules. It's about soldiers sent into chaos without support, daughters not believed, veterans who gave everything and got nothing but silence. I paused, letting it sink in. What I did wasn't easy. I broke protocol, violated oaths. But if it's a choice between blind loyalty and justice, I'd do it again. A murmur started, then a single clap, then more. The room rose to its feet. Not a roaring ovation, but something raw and real. Beyond the lights, I saw familiar faces. Widows of my team, old squad mates, medics who'd saved me. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outcast. I felt like a voice. For the silenced, for the forgotten. They said the ceremony would be low-key. They were wrong. The Hall of Valor was packed. Officers, senators, veterans, survivors, and countless cameras. Flags hung in every corner, and the golden light felt almost sacred. But it was the silence that hit me hardest, heavy with respect, not emptiness. I walked in wearing the same uniform I'd bled in, now clean and sharp. The medals they'd once stripped were back, plus more, but I didn't wear them for validation. I wore them to remember. Admiral Lattimore stood at the front, with the Secretary of Defense and the President's top military advisor beside him. His eyes met mine with respect, no trace of pity. He spoke clearly. Today we correct a wrong. We honor Lieutenant Commander Talia Morgan not just for her courage in battle, but for the integrity to speak truth when it was hidden. Patriotism isn't blind loyalty. It's holding our nation accountable, even when it's painful. My name rang out across the hall, through live streams into bases, hospitals, and veterans' homes. Strangers stood in their living rooms, saluting their screens. Lattimore held out a small box containing the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest military honor. For unwavering bravery under fire on and off the battlefield, he said, pinning it to my chest. It felt solid, grounding, not heavy. I held it together until I saw Kevin in the front row, eyes wet, mouthing words I didn't need to hear. Then I saw a woman I didn't know, holding a folded flag. Her son was in Operation Halberd. She mouthed, "Thank you." Behind her were more, wives, husbands, mothers, clapping not for my medals, but because their loved ones' stories were finally heard. The final speaker was a surprise, the Veterans Affairs Committee chair. Lieutenant Commander Morgan has restored honor to the fallen and changed how our military handles transparency. We're establishing the Morgan Act, a federal policy to protect soldiers reporting mission issues without fear of retaliation. My jaw tightened. I hadn't asked for a law, but I knew what it meant. No more silenced soldiers, no more hidden truths, no more deaths in the shadows. They offered a press conference. I said no. Instead, I walked through the Hall of Valor and stopped at the wall of names. Langston, Reyes, Doc, Miller, Willa, my team. Their names were freshly carved, deep and clear. I traced the letters with my fingers. "We made it," I whispered. "You're not forgotten anymore." Standing there, I finally felt what I'd been denied for years. Peace. I stood there at the ceremony, my eyes scanning the crowd, but he wasn't there. Not up front where the big shots sat, not lingering in the back with the stragglers, not even outside in the crisp morning air. I didn't ask anyone about him. Didn't need to. Deep in my gut, I already knew the truth. My dad, the man whose name once made heads turn in every military room, was gone. Not just from the ceremony, but from the world we'd both known. Back in the day, his face was everywhere. On recruitment posters, parade banners, even in those fancy books celebrating heroes. But now he was just a ghost. A story whispered as a warning. The man who called his own daughter a useless soldier right there in front of a tribunal, for all the world to hear. When that fracture mess hit and the tribunal leaked, his whole world fell apart faster than I ever thought possible. The media turned on him like wolves. The veterans groups, the ones who used to clap him on the back, pulled their support. The academy even chiseled his name off the legacy commander's wall. He wasn't a hero anymore. He was a relic, a piece of the past the military wanted to bury. At first, he fought back, held press conferences, swore the evidence was fake, even tried to say I was the one losing it. But every word he spit out just made him look smaller. Bitter, old, like he was yelling at a world that had already moved on. And then, just like that, he vanished from the spotlight. Months later, I saw him again, not on some screen or in a courtroom, but in the flesh. I was at the National Veterans Center's Memorial Garden, there to visit a young cadet who'd gotten banged up in training. As I headed out, I passed a quiet bench tucked away by the rose path. And there he was. Alone. No crisp uniform. No reporters buzzing around. No trace of that old pride that used to hold him up like steel. Just an old man, clutching a faded photo of himself from back when his back was straight and his medals shined bright. He didn't see me at first. I stood there, watching him, and for the first time in years, the anger I'd carried like a stone in my chest didn't come. I felt nothing. Just a hollow space where all that rage used to be. Then he looked up. Our eyes met, and it was like the weight of every year we'd lost crashed down on us. Not with fury or tears, but with this heavy, wordless silence. He stood, slow and shaky, like he wasn't sure he had the right to say anything. His lips quivered. Talia, he started, then stopped. I waited. He didn't say sorry, not outright. Never was one for apologies. Instead, he said something that's burned into me forever. You were always braver than me. That was it. No excuses. No explanations. Just the raw, naked truth, stripped of all his old armor. I nodded. Not to forgive him. Not to fight him. Just to say, yeah, I hear you. Then I walked away. Not to hurt him. There was no point in that anymore. There was nothing left to fix. These days, he lives quiet. A recluse, they say. Some whisper he tried to get on a private security board but got turned away. Others say he drinks. I don't keep tabs. I don't need to. The real justice wasn't just me rising above it all. It was the truth tearing down the false idol he'd built himself into. He lived for control, for silence, for that perfect image. But I learned something he never did. Silence kills. Truth sets you free. Now I've got everything. A second shot at serving, real respect, a name that's mine alone, not his shadow. All he's got is an echo of a last name and the memory of the daughter he tried to erase. That's what pride costs. That's the price of silence. In the end, he's the one the world forgot. Not me. They told me I didn't belong. Said I wasn't tough enough, that I didn't deserve the uniform I'd poured my heart into wearing. Those words cut deep, like a blade I couldn't dodge. But today, I'm still standing, walking forward with my shoulders back. Not as some victim, not even just a survivor, but as a woman who chose truth over keeping quiet, who picked dignity instead of settling scores. Not every story wraps up with a shiny medal. Not every dad looks you in the eye and says he's sorry. But you know what? Sometimes just walking away with your head held high is the biggest win you can claim. It's a quiet kind of loud, the kind that echoes in your bones. I'm so grateful you've stuck with me through this, right to the end. This isn't just my story. It's for every soldier who's had their voice drowned out. Every daughter who's had to stand on her own 2 feet, alone. And if this hit you somewhere deep, if you've ever felt invisible, counted out, or doubted, this space is for you. So, hit that like button for this video. Subscribe to Hidden Family Revenge Stories and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next tale. It might just feel like it's yours. Because every family's got its secrets. But not every secret stays buried forever. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.